Meaning of consumption: buying and using something, or how much of something has been used up. Consumption is the expenditure of goods and services by households. These items include household purchases on durable items, such as tables, chairs, motorbikes, and others. Meanwhile, service spending includes intangible goods, such as health service, laundry, and others. Factors affecting consumption. The first thing, a factor affecting consumption is income. Income is the most affecting thing, because the greater the income received by a person, the greater the purchasing power. And the second is future price forecast. In reality, price for goods and services are not stable enough. If it is expected that price will increase, then the community has a tendency to immediately use the money to buy goods and services, even though the income of the community has not changed. The third is the price of the goods. The price of the goods will have an influence on the size of one's consumption. Yes, when the price of goods increases, usually they will reduce their consumption. However, if prices are falling, they will certainly optimize it by increasing their consumption. The fourth is availability of goods and services. The fifth is taste. There are a difference between the attitude of the use of the finances and the people's taste in consumption. If people has a decreased appetite for consumption, it is certain that the level of consumption will also decline. Conversely, if the people's appetite for consumption increases, their consumption will also increase. Sixth is number of families. Number of families will affect the consumption. A family that has 4 children, their consumption will be different from those who have 2 children. And the last is tradition. This custom and habits are very influential on a person. For example, one of the customs that is usually carried out, such as for ritual ceremonies that use food ingredients, will certainly greatly affect consumption. Function of consumptions. According to John Maynard Keynes, the level of consumption of a person or household is determined by their income, but there are several other factors that influence consumption. The factor that influence consumption is objective factor and subjective factor. And now, we'll discuss about objective factor. The first thing that influence consumption in objective factor is price. A fairly large change in price will also cause a large change in people purchasing power. The greater the price, the purchasing power will decrease and vice versa. The second is fiscal policy. The fiscal policy of the government relating to taxation, expenditure, and public debt will appreciably affect the propensity to consume. The second is fiscal policy. The fiscal policy of the government relating to taxation, expenditure, and public debt will appreciably affect the propensity to consume. Heavy indirect taxes will leave little money with the people of low-income groups, and their consumption will get depressed. And the last is interest rate. The factor that attracts someone to save is the interest rate. The greater the interest rate on savings, the greater the fees for service provided by the bank. So the size of the interest rate affects a person's consumption decisions. And the last thing of the factor that influence consumption is subjective factor. The first is attitude to be careful. The consumer tries to be more careful in spending money by reducing consumption by setting aside a part of his income to face difficulties in the future. And the second is wealth-owned. A person who has inheritance or savings will use most of his income for consumption. And conversely, Someone who doesn't have inherited wealth or savings will prefer to set aside his income in savings.
Propensity to consume. In economics, the proportion of total income or of an increase in income that consumers tend to spend on goods and services rather than to save. The ratio of total consumption to total income is known as the average propensity to consume. An increase in consumption caused by an addition to income divided by that increase in income is known as the marginal propensity to consume. Marginal propensity to consume, or MPC. In economics, the marginal propensity to consume is defined as the proportion of an aggregate rise in pay that a consumer spends on the consumption of goods and services as opposed to saving it. The marginal propensity to consume is equal to delta C divided delta Y, where delta C is the change in consumption and delta Y is the change in income. The other side of the marginal propensity to consume is the marginal propensity to save, which shows how much a change in income affects level of saving. This calculation is important because MPC is not constant, it varies by income level. Typically, the higher the income, the lower the MPC because as income increases, more of a person's wants and needs become satisfied. As a result, they save more instead. Suppose you receive a $500 bonus on top of your normal annual earnings. You suddenly have $500 more in income than you did before. If you decide to spend $400 of things marginal increase in income on a new suite and save the remaining $100, your marginal propensity to consume will be 0.8. Average propensity to consume, or APC. The average propensity to consume measures the percentage of income that is spent rather than saved. This may be calculated by a single individual who wants to know where the money is going, or by an economist who wants to track the spending and saving habits of an entire nation. In general, low-income households are seen as having a higher average propensity to consume than high-income households. Average propensity to consume is tracked at the national level as a way of indicating the direction of the economy. Assume a nation's economy has a gross domestic product equivalent to its disposable income of $500 billion for the previous year. The total savings of the economy was $300 billion, and the rest was spent on goods and services. This indicates the economy spent 60% of its disposable income on saving. The average propensity to consume is calculated to be 0.40 or 1 minus 0.60.
Consumption is a function of disposable income, which shows the relationship between the level of consumption expenditure and the level of income that is ready to be spent. Calculation of the consumption function. Consumption function. The formula is C equal E plus BY. To find the consumption function, we can use two methods. The first method, we can use y min y1 to find y2 min y1 equal c min c1 define c2 min c1, which is c is consumption and y is income. Next, the second method, because c equal e plus by, which is E is national household consumption when national income is 0. B is marginal propensity to consume or MPC. And then C is level of consumption. To find the MPC, we can use delta C define delta Y. Characteristic of the consumption function curve. First, the consumption curve has a positive slope. This means that if income rises, then consumption also increases. For the second, the consumption curve intersects the z-axis above 0. This means that even though the income is 0, the consumption is still positive. For example, employed, children, people who are old and have no income continue to consume even though they have no income. And then, consumption cannot be 0. This means that even though you have no income, you still have to consume it, either by borrowing or attracting saving. After the characteristic about the function curve, we can see consumption function curve like this. Okay, example question. Halo, saya Daniela, seorang fresh graduate dengan gaji 5 juta rupiah dan pengeluaran 4,5 juta per bulan. Namun, di masa kuliah, saya hanya mengeluarkan 1,5 per bulan. So, let's find Daniel's consumption function and its consumption function curve. First solution. Kita dapat menggunakan rumus yang pertama, yaitu Y-1 per Y2 min Y1 sama dengan C-C1 per C2 min C1. Y-0 yaitu pendapatan sebelumnya per 5 min 0 yaitu pendapatan saat ini dikurangi pendapatan sebelumnya sama dengan C-1,5 yaitu konsumsi sebelumnya per 4,5 min 1,5 konsumsi saat ini dikurangi konsumsi sebelumnya, hingga diperoleh Y-0 per 5 sama dengan C-1,5 per 3. Kita kalikan silang, 5 kali C 5C, 5 dikali min 1,5 min 7,5 sama dengan 3 kali Y 3Y, 3 kali 0 0. Sehingga 5C sama dengan 3Y plus 7,5, C sama dengan 3Y plus 7,5 per 5. Sehingga fungsi dari konsumsi Daniel adalah C sama dengan 0,6Y plus 1,5. Second solution. Cara yang kedua adalah karena formula dari fungsi konsumsi adalah C sama dengan A plus BY atau C sama dengan A plus MPC Y, di mana delta C sama dengan 4,5 dikurangi 1,5 sama dengan 3, dan delta Y sama dengan 5 dikurangi 0 sama dengan 0, lalu kita dapat mencari MPC-nya, MPC atau B sama dengan delta C per delta Y, yaitu 3 per 5 sama dengan 0,6. Karena B sudah ketemu, kita mencari A. Karena A adalah konsumsi kita ketika pendapatan 0, yaitu 1,5, maka kita masukkan ke dalam formula fungsi konsumsi C sama dengan 0,6Y plus 1,5. Oke, Daniela's function C equal 0.6Y plus 1.5. Consumption function proof about Daniela. Because the consumption function is C equal 0.6Y plus 1.5, so the consumption function growth like this. And then we can put Daniel's total income into the consumption function to grasp the consumption growth.
Definition of saving. Savings in macroeconomic are defined as the portion of disposable income that is saved because it is not used up for consumption. According to Keynes, the amount of saving made by households do not depend on high and low interest rates. Savings depends on the size of the household income level. The greater the household income, the greater the amount of savings that will be made by the economy. Factors affecting saving. 1. The wealth that has been accumulated. As a result of getting inherited property or a lot of saving as a result of past business, then a person managed to have sufficient wealth. In such a situation, he is no longer motivated to save more. Then a large part of the income is used for consumption in the present. Conversely, for people who do not acquire an inheritance or wealth, they will be more determined to save to get more wealth in the future, or to meet the future needs of their family, such as buying a house, paying children's education, or making saving to prepare for old age. 2. Interest. Interest rates can be viewed as income earned for making saving. Households will make more saving when interest rates are high because more income for saving will be generated. At low interest rate, people do not really like making savings because they feel it is better to spend on consumption than to save. Thus, at low interest rates, people tend to increase their consumption expenditure. 3. Be thrifty. Various people have different attitudes in saving and shopping. There are people who do not like to shop excessively and are more concerned with saving. In such a society, the APC and MPC are lower, but there are also people who have a high tendency to consume, which means that their APC and MPC are high. 4. The state of the economy. In an economy that is growing steadily and with less unemployment, people tend to spend more actively. They tend to spend more nowadays and save less. But in a state of slow development of economic activity, the unemployment rate shows an increase, and the attitude of society is using money and income is becoming increasingly cautious. 5. Income distribution. In a society where the income distribution is unequal, more saving will be obtained. In such a society, first, most of the national income is enjoyed by a very small group of the population, and second, this group of people has a high tendency to save. Then they can create a lot of saving. A large segment of population has an income that is only sufficient to finance consumption, and their savings are small. In a society where the income distribution is more balanced, the saving rate is relatively small because they have a high propensity to consume. Seek the availability of sufficient pension fund. Pension fund programs are run in various countries. There are countries that provide pensions that are quite high for older population groups. If the income from the pension is large, the workers are not motivated to save a lot while working, and this increases the level of consumption. Conversely, if the pension income as a guarantee of life in old age is very insufficient, people tend to save more when they work. Saving function. The saving function is a list, graph, or equation that shows the relationship between savings and the various variables that influence it, which in the simplest theories is determined by disposable income.
Average propensity to save, or APS. The average propensity to save, or APS, is an economic term that refers to the proportion of income that is saved rather than spent on goods and services, also known as the savings ratio. It is usually expressed as a percentage of total household disposable income minus taxes. The inverse of average propensity to save is the average propensity to consume, or APC. Key takeaways. In economics, average propensity to save, or APS, refers to the proportion of income that is saved rather than spent on goods and services. APS is affected by a mix of demographic and economic factors such as proportion of old people, rate of inflation, and current interest rates. APS is calculated by dividing total savings by income level. Understanding average propensity to save. The average propensity to save is an important economic indicator for a population. The current saving rate of a population can be linked to behaviors such as saving for retirement, which affect the well-being of a population as it ages. A population average propensity to save can be affected by demographic factors such as the proportion of older people in the region. Older people have already passed the wealth accumulation phase of their life and more likely to consume than spend. Younger people who are in the wealth accumulation phase of their life should be saving their money for large purchases like house and for retirement. A population with a low average propensity to save might have a large percentage of old people or a high percentage of irresponsible young people. Other factors can also influence a population average propensity to save, such as the rate of inflation and current interest rates. If inflation is high, prices are expected to rise in the future. People will spend their money now and make purchases in the present day that they may have otherwise delayed in order to get a better price. If they wait, prices may have risen. Low interest rate will also encourage people to make purchases now, as they are not being incentivized to save due to the low interest rate being paid. Conversely, a low inflation or deflationary environment and high interest rates environment will encourage saving and delay of purchases. As income levels change, the average propensity to save become an inexact tool to measure this change. In such case, the marginal propensity to save is used as a measure for calculating savings for an individual. Calculating average propensity to save. The formula to calculate APS is total savings divided by income level, for which we want to determine APS. For example, if the income level is 100 and the total savings for that level is 30, then APS is 30 divided 100 or 0.3. APS can never be 1 or greater than 1. That said, APS can have a negative value if income is 0 and consumption has a positive value. For example, if income is 0 and consumption is 30, then the APS value will be minus 0.3. Marginal propensity to save, or MPS. In Keynesian economic theory, the marginal propensity to save, or MPS, refers to the proportion of an aggregate raise in income that a consumer saves rather than spends on the consumption of goods and services. Put differently, the marginal propensity to save is the proportion of each added dollar of income that is saved rather than spent. MPS is component of Keynesian macroeconomic theory and is calculated as the change in saving divided by the change in income, or as the complement of the marginal propensity to consume, or MPC. Key takeaways. Marginal propensity to save is the proportion of an increase in income that gets saved instead of spent on consumption. MPS varies by income level. MPS is typically higher at higher income. MPS helps determine the Keynesian multiplier, which describes the effect of increased investment of government spending as an economic stimulus. Understanding the marginal propensity to save, or MPS. Suppose you receive a $500 bonus with your paycheck. You suddenly have $500 more in income than you did before. If you decide to spend $400 of this marginal increase on a new business suite and save the remaining $100, your marginal propensity to save is 0.2. $100 change in saving divided by $500 change in income. The other side of marginal propensity to save is marginal propensity to consume, which show how much a change in income affects purchasing levels. In this example, where you spend $400 of your $500 bonus, marginal propensity to consume is 0.8. $400 divided by $500. Adding MPS 0.2 to MPC 0.8 equals 1. The marginal propensity to save is generally assumed to be higher for wealthier individuals than it is for poor individuals. Given data on household income and household savings, economists can calculate household MPS by income level. This calculation is important because MPS is not constant. It varies by income level. Typically, the higher the income, the higher the MPS, because as wealth increases, so does the ability to satisfy needs and wants. And so each additional dollar is less likely to go toward additional spending. However, the possibility remains that a consumer might alter savings and consumption habit with an increase in pay. Naturally, with an increase in salary comes the ability to cover household expenses more easily, allowing for more leeway to save. With a higher salary also comes access to goods and services that require greater expenditures. This may include the procurement of higher-end or luxury vehicle or relocation to a new, pricier residence. If economics knows what consumers' MPS is, they can determine how increases in government spending or investment spending will influence saving. MPS is used to calculate the expenditures multipliers using the formula 1 divided MPS. The expenditures multiplier tell us how change in consumers' marginal propensity to save influence the rest of the economy. The smaller the MPS, the larger the multiplier and the more economic impact a change in government spending or investment will have.
Okay, this time I will explain about the saving curve. Previously, the following data were known. So, the formula for the consumption equation is C equal 300 plus 0.7 GT. Then we can see about consumption curve that's like this. And then from the example of the consumption function above, the saving function and its curve can be made as follows. The function is C equal 300 and plus 0.7 GD. So the function of saving curve is S equal minus 300 plus 0.3 GD. We can see about the saving curve like this. Next, I will explain about marginal propensity to save, or MPS. MPS is a concept that describes the relationship between increased income and increased savings. In other words, the MPS shows a picture of how much savings would increase if disposable income increased by 1 unit. And the formula of MPS is MPS equal delta S by divided delta YG. For your information, delta S is the increase in saving and delta YG is the increase in disposable income, which the results in the increase in consumption. Next, I will explain about MPC, or marginal propensity to consume. Marginal propensity to consume is a concept that describes the relationship between increased income and increased consumption. In other words, the MPC shows a picture of how much consumption will increase if disposable income increase by 1 unit. The formula of MPC is MPC equal delta C by divided delta YG. For information, delta C is the increase in consumption and YG is the increase in disposable income. Okay, the last I will explain about the relationship between MPC and MPS. Before, a consumption function is a function that describes the relationship between household consumption level and national income is an economy. The propensity to consume, marginal or MPC, which is the ratio between increased consumption and increased income, is disproportionate. The formula of MPC is MPC equal delta C by divided delta YG. And then the saving function is a function that describes the relationship between the household saving rate and the national income in the economy. The marginal tendency to save, or MPS, is the ratio between the increase in savings and the increase in disposable income. The formula of MPS is delta S by divided delta YG. So, between MPC and MPS have a close relationship. We can prove this by using the following equation. MPS plus MPC equal 1. MPC equal 1 mean MPS, or MPS equal 1 mean MPC.
Definition of investments. A. Activities to buy various kinds of capital goods such as machinery and other production equipment. B. Activities to build office buildings, factory buildings, and other buildings. The activity of buying shares is not classified as an investment. However, if a company that receives money from the sale of shares uses the money to purchase capital goods and production equipment, then the buying activity is classified as an investment. Factors affecting the level of investment. A. The predicted rate of return will be obtained. The greater the level of profit that is predicted to be obtained, the higher the investment will be. Otherwise, the lower level of profit that is predicted to be obtained, the lower investment will be. Interest rate. There is one standard used by investors in making investments, namely the percentage of profits obtained from investments must be greater than the percentage of the current interest. The percentage of interest is also called the interest rate. C. Forecast regarding the state of the economy in the future. The profit obtained from investment is influenced by the state of the economy, both present and future economies. Therefore, if the economic condition in the future is predicted to be very good, investors will be eager to invest so that the amount of investment will increase. Conversely, if the economic condition in the future is predicted to be bad, investors will not to be enthusiastic about investing so that the amount of investment will decrease. D. Technology advance. In general, the more new technologies that are discovered, the more opportunities there will be for entrepreneurs to use these new technologies in the production process. To carry out the production process with new technology, entrepreneurs have to buy new machines and often have to establish new factories. This means entrepreneurs have to invest. Thus, the higher of the technological progress, the higher of amount of investment. E. National income level. High national income will increase people's income. Large community income will increase the demand for goods and services. Increased demand for goods and services will encourage investors to invest to meet this increased demand. Thus, it can be concluded that the higher the income, the higher the amount of investment. F. Company advantage. The greater profits obtained by the company, the more opportunities for entrepreneurs to expand their business. In order to expand their business, it is necessary to make investments. Thus, the greater the company's profit, the greater the amounts of investment. Investment demand curve. What is meant by the investment demand curve is a curve that describes the relationship between the interest rate and investment. Pay attention to the following interest rate and investment data below. First, 2% interest rate is 350 million invest. Second, 4% interest rate is 300 million invest. Third, 6% interest rate is 250 million invest. Fourth, 8% interest rate is 200 million invest. Fifth, 10% interest rate is 150 million invest. Sixth, 12% interest rate is 100 million invest. 7. 14% interest rate is 50 million invest. Based on the data above, the investment demand curve can be made as follows, like here. From the picture above, it appears that the investment demand curve moves from top left to bottom right, just like the demand curve for goods and services in general. From this data and curves, it is known that the higher the interest rate, the lower the investment. Otherwise, the lower the interest rate, the higher the investment. Why the higher the interest rate, the lower or smaller the investment amount? Because the higher the interest rate, the more interest the investor will have to pay. This happens when the investment is made from borrowed money, so that the higher the interest rate will make investors lazy to invest. However, if the investment is made with your own money, the higher the interest rate, the lower the investors' enthusiasm for investing. This is because investors will be more interested in borrowing or lending their money to get the desired amount of the interest.